Alright, welcome to the Strange North channel. In this video, I'm going to cover the major towns and smaller cities that surround the city of Calgary and make up part of its metropolitan region. Alberta is still the fastest growing province in the country, but not everybody moving here wants to live in Edmonton or Calgary. Many people are more comfortable in a smaller town, and so I wanted to show you all of the towns and smaller cities that surround the big city of Calgary. And in this video, I'm going to cover the following places: Airdrie, Strathmore, Chestermere, High River, Okotoks, and Cochran. And if you're moving to the Calgary area but you want to live in a smaller town outside of the city, I hope this gives you some ideas. And I'm going to start with the city of Airdrie, which is directly north of Calgary. And it's actually the 5th biggest city in Alberta after Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer, and Lethbridge. It was founded in 1889 as a stop on the Calgary and Edmonton Railway, and it was named after the town of Airdrie in Scotland. This area had only railway buildings until 1901, when the first farmhouse and barn were built. This was followed by a post office and store that same year, and the village of Airdrie was incorporated in 1909. One unique feature of Airdrie is that its elevation makes it the highest city in Canada. In terms of parks and recreation, obviously Airdrie is close to the Rockies, but there are some parks within city limits, including Nose Creek Regional Park. This is a 20-acre park in the middle of the city. It has an amphitheater, trails, picnic areas, and a playground. This area also has an off-leash dog park, pickleball courts, and then the Nose Creek Valley Museum. This is actually a great little museum with an impressive amount of historical artifacts from this area, and I would definitely recommend it for fans of local history. You've also got the Chinook Winds Regional Park. This area has a bunch of pathways, ball diamonds, a splash park, and a skate park. The area around East Lake also has more trails, a hockey rink, tennis courts, soccer fields, and the massive Genesis Place, which is everything you'd expect in a comprehensive recreational facility, including a fitness area, hockey rinks, an aquatic center, and a field house. Obviously, this is a small city rather than a smaller town, and it pretty much has any basic service you might want. But honestly, to me personally, Airdrie just doesn't have the same vibrant downtown area as some of the other towns on this list. And it's definitely not known for having the best shopping or dining, but it definitely does have some great restaurants. For example, Flavors of Montreal is very popular, and they specialize in authentic Montreal smoked meat. I'd recommend Abe's Modern Diner for breakfast and burgers, and then Perros on Main is a very popular local spot that serves authentic Greek food. Some of Airdrie's major sports teams are the Airdrie Thunder, who play in the Heritage Junior B Hockey League, and the Rocky View Knights, who play in the Rocky Mountain Lacrosse League. Airdrie Transit provides 3 services. It provides regular routes within Airdrie itself, a paratransit service for people with disabilities, and the Intercity Express buses that offer service between Airdrie and Calgary. And then some popular festivals in the city include the Airdrie Pro Rodeo every Canada Day weekend, and the annual Airdrie Festival of Lights, which usually takes place over the month of December. And so Airdrie is basically a large northern suburb of Calgary. It's the biggest location on this list. Honestly, Airdrie is not my favorite of Calgary's surrounding towns. I definitely prefer a couple I'm going to get to later in this list, but it's a popular place to live. It's still growing, and it has a lot to offer local residents. Okay, number 2 on this list is Strathmore. This sits along the Trans-Canada Highway about 50 kilometers east of Calgary in the middle of Wheatland County. Its current population is about 15,000 people, and it's one of the smaller towns on this list. Strathmore was founded as a hamlet in 1883 when the Canadian Pacific Railway built lines through this area. In fact, on the very day that Strathmore was founded, July 28th of 1883, as workers were laying track through this area, a Canadian record was established that day with the most track laid in a single day. And the Canadian Pacific Railway was instrumental in developing this area. In 1904, they completed their irrigation system, which was a huge network of ditches and canals that comprised the Western Irrigation District. And this brought water to the homesteaders in this area and made farming possible. And in 1905, after the completion of this irrigation system, the original hamlet of Strathmore was moved 4 miles to the north, and it was later incorporated as a village in 1908. Strathmore was made the headquarters for this new irrigation system, and this area has a long history of agriculture. The Canadian Pacific Railway demonstration farm became world famous, and it drew settlers from all over Canada and the US. And this farm acted as both a model and instructional tool for settlers, many of whom had never farmed before. The last Canadian Pacific Railway lines were removed in 1981, but the legacy of the irrigation system lives on in the Western Irrigation District, which still exists to this day. At about 15,000 people, this is one of the smaller towns on this list, and it has the typical chain restaurants and big box stores that you'd expect in a town this size. But if you're looking for something a bit more unique, some of the best reviewed restaurants in town are the Saffron Bistro, and they serve Indian food, and then the Four Sisters Kitchen and Table has become very popular as well. And then in terms of parks and recreation, you've got the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Center, which has 2 full-size gymnasiums, a 5-line indoor track, a batting cage, and a soccer field. You've also got the Strathmore Aquatic Center and the Strathmore Family Center Arena. This town also has its own 18-hole golf course. Strathmore has many other smaller parks throughout the town, including Kinsman Park and the Strathmore Water Park. Strathmore doesn't have a transit system, but the Strathmore Handy Bus provides travel-on-demand service for residents with mobility issues. Every year, Strathmore has its Heritage Day celebrations, which include the Strathmore Stampede. This is Canada's 3rd largest rodeo, and this is centered around the Strathmore Stampede grounds. Strathmore District Health Services is a full-service hospital with a 24-hour emergency department, but this place definitely has pretty mediocre reviews. And so Strathmore has an interesting history of being the center of agricultural development in this region, and it's one of the smaller towns on this list, so it's definitely ideal for people looking for a small town vibe. Okay, at number 3 is Chestermere. This is directly east of Calgary, and it's basically an eastern suburb of the city. The current population is just under 24,000. The city was founded in 1884, and it completely surrounds Chestermere Lake. This lake is man-made. It actually started out just as a wetlands area. So in the 1800s, as the Canadian Pacific Railway was developing this region, they built a dam and canal and developed this wetlands area into a lake. This lake was used as a balancing pool for the western irrigation system, which I previously mentioned, and it supported agricultural development in this region. Over time, the lake was used more and more for recreation, and people would build cabins on the lake and stay there during the summer months. Chestermere was incorporated as a summer village in 1977, and by that time the lake had 120 permanent homes and many smaller cabins in this area. And many years later, in 2015, Chestermere became Alberta's 18th city. Obviously, Lake Chestermere is the big attraction in this area. This lake is popular for fishing, boating, water skiing, and wakeboarding. And this lake is also home to the Calgary Yacht Club. Other recreational options in town include the Lakeside Golf Club, which is an 18-hole course. They have a BMX park and a skate park, as well as the Chestermere Rec Center and sports fields. And then the John Peake Memorial Park is also pretty popular. Chestermere is also connected to the Calgary Bicycle Pathway System at the south end of the city. And I have to shout out Camp Chestermere. This is a beautiful Christian camp on the southeast end of the lake. I've been here a couple times and it's a great little camp. And I'm not going to go into real estate too much in this video. There are definitely better YouTube channels for that. But Chestermere tends to have a bit more of a posh vibe. Properties are a bit more expensive compared to the other places I mentioned. And it just has a little bit more of an upscale vibe. Although I have to say, Chestermere, in my opinion, doesn't have the best shopping or dining options. It definitely has a couple unique places and some chain stores, but it definitely doesn't have the same vibrant downtown area as some of the other places on this list. The city does not have its own local transit system, but Calgary Transit provides service into Chestermere during the morning and evening rush hours. And so again, this is more of an eastern suburb of Calgary, but it's definitely a very pleasant town and it provides quick access to the larger city of Calgary. Okay, at number 4 is High River. This is about 68 kilometers south of Calgary, and its current population is about 15,000 people, so it's about the same size as Strathmore. High River was named after the Highwood River, which flows through this town. This area was originally inhabited by the Blackfoot First Nation, who called the site Ispitsi, or Place of High Trees Along Running Water, after the arrival of the Northwest Mounted Police, and after Treaty Number 7 had been signed in 1877, settlers began arriving in this area. High River's development centered on a convenient location for people, horses, and cattle to cross the Highwood River. Development of High River was supported by the completion of the Calgary and Edmonton Railway in 1892. It was incorporated as a village in 1901 and then as a town in 1906. One of Canada's first Air Force stations was built east of the town in 1921, and the establishment of a British Commonwealth Air Training Plan elementary flying training school at this air station helped boost High River's economy during the Second World War. The Highwood River that flows through this town is prone to frequent flooding, and major flood events are a major part of High River's history. This town has experienced many major floods, with the most recent major event happening in 2013. That year, central and southern Alberta experienced catastrophic flooding, the worst Alberta had ever seen. 32 states of local emergency were declared, 5 people died, many more were injured, and over 100,000 people were displaced. When all was said and done, it was the costliest disaster in Canadian history at $1.7 billion until the 2016 Fort McMurray wildfire, also in Alberta. During the 2013 flooding, High River was evacuated and the town suffered unprecedented damage. 150 people had to be rescued from the rooftops of their homes, and 3 people died as a result of the flooding of the Highwood River. Another interesting thing about High River is that it's been used as a filming location for a bunch of movies and TV shows, including Superman 3, Caitlin's Way, Heartland, Fargo, Tin Star, Black Summer, and The Last of Us, which was fairly recently. And Maggie's Diner from the Heartland TV film set still stands as a tourist attraction in this town. In terms of parks and recreation, this town has a lot of options. It has a bunch of parks and trails centered around the Highwood River flowing through town. The Bob Snodgrass Recreation Complex is a comprehensive fitness facility and pool. Highwood Golf is a 27-hole golf course beside the river. You've also got the George Lane Memorial Park and Campground, as well as a variety of smaller parks. The Museum of the Highwood is located in the iconic High River train station, and it's on the Canadian Register of Historic Places. This is a fantastic facility and a really cool building, and it has a really cool collection of history going back thousands of years. And I would definitely recommend this place for history enthusiasts. Right next to this museum and visitor center is the also iconic dining car at High River Station. This rail car was built in 1947 as a coach for the Canadian National Rail Line. It was retired in 1980, and volunteers brought it to High River in 1989 and restored it. And eventually, the dining car at High River Station was established in 1993 as a restaurant, and it has been in continuous operation ever since. The dining car is definitely the most well-known restaurant in town, but I would also recommend Evelyn's Memory Lane Diner. This is a great spot and definitely one of the better places to eat in town. And to finish off, one of my favorite things about this town is the High River Sunset Drive-In. This is run by a non-profit organization completely run by volunteers, and it's one of the few drive-in theaters in Alberta and a really fun relic of the past. This town also has a proper hospital. The High River General Hospital is a full-service facility with a 24-hour emergency department. And personally, I like High River more than the towns I've mentioned on this list so far. I find it to be very walkable, it has a good amount of green space, and it has some really cool historic buildings and some great places to eat. And again, it's one of the smaller towns on this list at about 15,000 people, and so it definitely doesn't have a massive selection of shops and services. But I personally always enjoyed my time in High River, and this is definitely a great option for people looking for a small town vibe. Okay, at number 5 is Okatoks. This is north of High River and about 38 kilometers south of downtown Calgary. It has a population of about 31,000, so it's about twice as big as High River or Strathmore. The name Okatoks is derived from the Blackfoot name for rock. The name may refer to Big Rock, which is a massive glacier erratic boulder about 75 kilometers west of town, and members of the Blackfoot Confederacy used this rock as a marker to find the river crossing located at Okatoks. In the late 1870s and early 1880s, the site of the future town was a river crossing location on the freight wagon route from Fort Macleod to Fort Calgary. This was known as the Macleod Trail or the Macleod-Calgary Trail, and this was an extension of the Fort Benton-Fort Macleod Trail, which led from Fort Benton, Montana to Fort Macleod. There were 2 stopping houses on the north side of the river to shelter travelers, and this area eventually attracted permanent settlement. The railway was built through town in 1892, and very quickly the old Macleod Trail fell out of use. This community also grew around a large sawmill that had been established in 1891, and this was a very prominent early business. In 1900, 4 brick-making plants opened west of Okatoks, and many of the first brick buildings in town were built using these locally made bricks. Okatoks was incorporated as a village in 1899, and then as a town in 1904. There was a major oil discovery west of Okatoks in 1913, and Okatoks became the supply center for this new industry. Between 1913 and the 1960s, supplies and crude oil would be hauled through town regularly, and this contributed to Okatok's development and growth. And Okatoks has really preserved a lot more of its old buildings than a lot of towns this size. The Okatoks Museum and Archives has the history of this area on display, and it's located in a beautiful historic home, and I definitely recommend this place. The Okatoks Art Gallery is located in the old train station building. They have a fantastic art collection in a really cool building, and this is another way the town has preserved its history. And then the Old Church Theatre is located, as you might expect, in an old preserved church. This is a well-regarded performing arts theater, and they host a variety of performances every year. The Sheep River flows right through the town of Okatoks, and this town has had major flooding events in 1995, 2005, and 2013. In 2005, virtually all lands adjacent to the Sheep River were flooded, and Okatoks sustained significant damage. And of course, it was also affected by the major Alberta floods in 2013. This town has plenty of recreational options and green space. Obviously, the river flows through town, and this area has some beautiful walking trails. The Okatoks Recreation Center has hockey rinks, a curling rink, a fitness area, and a swimming pool with a hot tub and sauna. The town also has a skate park, a BMX bike track, beach volleyball courts, ball diamonds. Crystal Ridge Golf Club is a 9-hole course on the north side of town, and you also have the Okatoks Off-Leash Dog Park. And I just find this town in general has a decent amount of park space. An interesting thing in Okatoks is the Drake Landing solar community. This is billed as the first solar-powered subdivision in North America, and it's a planned community equipped with central solar heating systems and other energy-efficient technologies. The heating system they used was the first of its kind in North America, although much larger similar systems have been built in Northern Europe. Okotoks definitely has better restaurants than most towns on this list. In terms of premium food, the Ridge at Okotoks is a luxury hotel, and they serve some of the best food in town, if not the best. You've also got the Heartland Cafe and Restaurant. This is located in a converted church, and this is one of the most popular overall restaurants in town. And I definitely recommend Home Ground Cafe. In my opinion, they have the best coffee in Okotoks, and they also do delicious cinnamon buns and other treats. Since 1974, Okotoks has been hosting a collector car auction in late May, and it is the longest running collector car auction in Canada. Okotoks Transit operates an on-demand bus service within the town boundaries. And overall, I really enjoy Okotoks. I definitely like it a lot more than Airdrie or Chestermere, but I definitely think Okotoks is a fun place to hang out. It has a lot of green space, it's preserved its history very well, and it has some great places to grab a bite, and I just think this is a very decent town overall. Okay, and at number 6 to close out this list is the town of Cochrane. It's located about 18 kilometers west of Calgary, and it has a population of about 37,000 people. The Bow River flows through the town, although most of it is situated on the north side of the river. Cochrane is intersected by Highway 1A and Highway 22, and there's a lot of traffic going through this town. Honestly, this town probably has the worst traffic on its main roads out of any of the places I've listed, at least in my personal experience. The town was established in 1881 as the Cochrane Ranch after local rancher Matthew Henry Cochrane. It was incorporated as a village in 1903, and it had a newspaper and volunteer fire department by 1909. It was eventually incorporated as a town in 1971, and to this day Cochrane has a reputation for its Western culture rooted in its ranching past, and it has a number of Western themed storefronts, particularly in its downtown area. For example, in the heart of downtown Cochrane, you'll find the Rocky View Hotel. This was built in 1904. It's one of Cochrane's few remaining original buildings, and it's definitely one of the oldest operational hotels in Western Canada. This hotel also houses the Texas Gate Bar and Grill. This is a great place to grab some delicious food and drink. And Cochrane has a variety of other great restaurants. For example, Azito Japanese Restaurant as well as Sakura Sushi and Grill have surprisingly good Japanese food for a prairie town. I definitely recommend Sunny Side Up for breakfast and lunch. And then in my personal opinion, Vine Coffee Company has the best coffee in town, and I really enjoy visiting that place as well. And then of course you have McKay's Ice Cream. Honestly, this business is partially what Cochrane is famous for. Located in an old historic building in downtown Cochrane, McKay's has been around since 1948, and they specialize in locally made premium ice cream. And to this day, it remains one of the most well-known businesses in town. And I definitely recommend grabbing an ice cream cone at McKay's if you're in Cochrane. The historic Cochrane Ranch site is where the original ranch was located, and this was actually the first large-scale ranch in Alberta. And at this site you'll also find the Cochrane Historical Museum, which is located in a beautiful old brick building, and they have an excellent collection of local history. And then not far from this area is the Cochrane Ranch House, which was originally built in 1887 as part of the main ranch, and this historic landmark has been restored and repurposed into a very popular event center. And in terms of recreation, the general area around Cochrane is really getting into the foothills region of the mountains, and this town is definitely surrounded by very dynamic topography. Not only are the Rocky Mountains fairly close to this town, but the area around the town itself is very popular with cyclists, hikers, and people enjoying a variety of outdoor activities. The town also has an excellent trail system along the Bow River, and then at 325,000 square feet, the SLS Center is one of the largest multi-use recreational facilities in Alberta. It has 4 ice hockey arenas, a massive aquatic center, a curling center, an indoor track, fitness center, gymnasium, gymnastics center, food and beverage outlets, and a variety of other services. You also have the links at Glen Eagles, which is a beautiful 18-hole course within city limits. And then Cochrane is also a small industrial center. The town itself has a large industrial portion, and major industries include lumber and construction. In fact, the town is notable as being one of the few communities in Canada with no business tax. The Cochrane On-Demand Local Transit System provides an app-based on-demand local transit service, and it also has connector buses to Calgary. The Cochrane Farmers Market is very popular. This is held every Saturday from June to October, and Cochrane also hosts many popular annual events, such as the Bow Valley Boot Stomp Country Music Festival in July, the annual Cochrane Rodeo, as well as very popular Canada Day and Labor Day parade celebrations. Cochrane is a fair size, and it definitely has your typical big box stores and chain restaurants, but I find it also has a decent selection of unique shops as well. For example, one of my favorite little shops in town is called Found. This is a small independent bookstore, and they have a fantastic selection. And honestly, along with High River and Okatoks, this is one of my favorite towns on this list. It has a really interesting downtown area with some well-preserved historic buildings. It has a good selection of decent places to eat, and the town is very well situated for outdoor enthusiasts. And that pretty much wraps up this list. I've covered the major towns and cities that surround Calgary as part of its metropolitan region. There are definitely other smaller towns in this area around Calgary that I didn't cover in this video, but I just hope this gave you some ideas if you're looking at moving to the Calgary area, but you don't necessarily want to live in the middle of the city. Calgary has fantastic living options in its greater metropolitan area. I hope you found this interesting and informative, and if you'd like to watch more of my content in general, please consider subscribing to my channel. I upload at least one new video per week. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Strange North channel.